the number of people who have the overview and consider the global commons are few, are getting less and less. So many politicians are more concerned about next election and being elected. So they think 3-4 years ahead. The companies, they think of next year's turnover result. And the scientists often have the global perspective, but they are also sometimes funded by the businesses, so they are also short-term. And the NGO community, yes, there is anxiety, but I feel that has now turned to apathy. People just sit there and are depressed and don't want to do anything. The number of marches and actually demonstrations are less because people run out of energy. They have kind of activism fatigue, I would say. So, and I do get affected, especially the first 3 days. I say to myself, I'll never do this again. And I plan my exit, and I wonder, how do I exit Green Team with grace, not affecting the overall picture? And then after 1 or 2 days, I realize, oh, I'm affected by the energy. This is how people feel like. And I just need to realize that, and then, okay, I'm just affected, that's it. And then I come back to my normal self. And I think it's because I'm busy the first 2 days, and my mind is just thinking practical, and maybe yoga more in exhibition and side events rather than God. So that's why I get affected the first few days, and then I settle in, and then with meditation.
I'd like to come back to that in a moment, because I think how we resist compassion fatigue is an important question. Before we do that though, Golo, just a quick question for you. You were talking about the Global South and how they are affected disproportionately. And of course the big nations that are coal burning like China, places that we should be keeping an eye on. And I know China has got an energy conference going on at the moment. Why should we care about what's happening in China?
Well, China is the biggest emitter right now of CO2, but it's also the country with the most dynamic industry in renewable energies. China is the biggest producer of solar plates, is by far the biggest producer of solar batteries, and is the country which is installing more renewable energy capacity than the rest of the world every year. So what happens in China is extremely important for the rest of the world. And interestingly, China is embracing clean technology in a very big way, because they have understood if they don't go green, they will be massively affected by climate change. And already the cost of climate change is estimated to be $500 billion per year, the damage through climate change. And numbers are going up. Soon we reach $1 trillion per year damage. And the Chinese, they understand it. And they have a new 5-year plan. And everybody is waiting when the plan is being published, and what are the numbers they are anticipating for renewable energy and reduction of fossil fuel. So what happens in China is extremely important, much more important than what happens in America. Unfortunately, America has withdrawn from climate negotiations, and the current political party believes climate change is a hoax. And whatever happens is God sent. It means if there's a storm or anything, it's by God. But interestingly, right now, some commentators said that the current war, which happened in the Gulf, is the best what could happen for the climate, because oil prices are going up. And oil prices are going up, and the power by renewable energy is going down. And meanwhile, solar energy is cheaper than fossil fuel-based energy. So it's simply a business equation, and more people are getting now the numbers, and there's a huge trend in the world to get away from fossil fuels. The problem is it's taking time. These investments are long-term investments over a time horizon of 5, 10, 20 years, and you cannot phase out a coal-based power plant from today to tomorrow. These things, they take a bit of time. That's why it's a slow change which is happening right now.
Beautiful. I think it would be nice if we could all welcome Sister Jayanti with just a moment of silence, shared silence together. You could lead us in that. Thank you. And a very warm welcome to Sister Jayanti. Thank you for making time to join our conversation this morning. And of course, you always make time for everyone and everything. But when it comes to the environment, it seems like you particularly make time. What is it about the environment that you feel is so important?
Just as we focus on meditation for purification of the soul, we are also interested to have pure matter. And so I feel that the whole involvement in the environment is actually part of the journey towards learning how to live with nature. We've forgotten how to do this. And so when we again learn to respect nature, love nature, live with nature in a way that's with compassion and love, then I think that we're going to be preparing for the golden age, not just in terms of the soul being Satupradhan, but how do I make my relationship with this and matter Satupradhan. So I feel that it's a subject that has been neglected, not just in terms of the world out there, but also in terms of the family. Because the family maybe had the thought, well, destruction is coming, so it doesn't really matter. But I think it's very important to realize that my attitude to nature today is going to give me a space in Satyug, either early on in Satyug or at the end of Satyug or Silver Age.
I'm always interested in how people's childhood experiences direct and inform where they put their interest later in life. And I'm wondering what your experience was. You grew up in India, in Pune, until the age of 8, and you were very close to your grandmother, who obviously belonged to a previous generation with attitudes that maybe went out of fashion. What do you remember about those early years and your formative experiences of being in nature?
I was born in Pune very soon after partition, so it wasn't a time to be thinking about nature. It was more a time for just basic survival. But there's one particular scene that makes me laugh when I think about it today. Monsoon season, we had summer holidays in April and May, and then June we went back to school, and then it was monsoons very soon after. And monsoons used to happen very regularly. Now they're a little bit erratic, as with all aspects of nature. But we used to wear, those big Wellington boots. We called them gum boots because they were rubber. So we put on our gum boots, and I must have been that high, so my gum boot must have been... and we put on rain coats. Again, very basic, simple, rubbery type things. You wouldn't wear them today. And we'd be very careful that we don't tread on the worms. Because when it was raining, the worms leave their little nests down below and come out onto the surface. And there were little worms swirling around everywhere. So we'd be tiptoeing, making sure that we don't step on the worms, because we might have to take birth as a worm. And so today I think about it and I laugh, but it was part of that awareness that humans are part of the cycle of nature. And of course in Bhakti, when you think about rebirth, generally in Buddhism and Hinduism, you come into the migration of the species. You don't stay a human for the whole of the eternal cycle, but you've been through the migration and maybe you go back again. And so we'd be laughing and playing, but we'd be very careful. We don't tread on any worms.
We tend to, in the West, think of India as having an innate...
Phillippa, there was one more scene that I remember very, very clearly, because I was living in a built-up area. Pune is even more built up today than it was then. but it was already an industrial city, but also with an academic slant. Today it's an IT city. So I don't know whether that's progress or what, but I remember about age 5 or 6, I managed to get jaundice. And my grandfather would take me at 6 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, to walk bare feet on the grass in one of the parks. It wasn't so near, but we'd go by rickshaw and then come back, and I'd leave my slippers and we'd go for a stroll for about half an hour on the grass. And apparently this was healing, and I'm sure it was. Probably people who are into healing and stuff will understand. But for me it was fun. It was nice to be on the grass when the dew had just come. It was still there. Later it would get too hot and the dew would have gone. But walking on wet grass was bliss. So that's the other memory of nature that I have.
That's very beautiful, vivid memory. Do you think there was an innate understanding of the sanctity of nature in India at that time? And I wonder what difference you noticed when you then came to London at the age of 8. Did it feel like the attitude towards nature and the environment was different?
One big thing, of course, was that in India, part of the awareness of life is a vegetarian diet. And so I was a natural vegetarian from birth. My mother wasn't. She changed overnight with Baba's Gyan. And my grandfather wasn't. So on one side, my father was away. So my grandmother and myself were vegetarian. My brother, my mother, and my grandfather were not. So it was 2 types of cooking going on at the same time at home. But I was very aware that vegetarian was not just simply my natural instinct, but it was something important. And then coming to England, that was the biggest change I saw, that people didn't even know anything about vegetarian diet. They thought eating lettuce was vegetarian, that's it. And what do vegetarians eat? They ate potatoes and carrots and lettuce. They had no idea there could be anything else. So, and I suppose coming to England in winter 1957, there were very few other vegetables around. It was potatoes and cabbages and carrots. Today you can get anything anywhere, especially London. But in those days you didn't fly vegetables across the oceans, so that was good. But it meant that vegetarian diet just wasn't on anyone's radar, no one.
You also arrived in the winter when there were no leaves on the trees, and you weren't used to seeing no leaves on the trees, and you just assumed that in England the trees didn't have leaves.
I did, and I've said that sometime. Because we arrived and it was a very severe winter that year, December 57. And we were living near Hampstead Heath, which was nice because I saw a carpet of snow everywhere. It was very beautiful. But I saw trees without leaves, and I thought that's how it is in England. And nobody informed me of anything better. So when April came and I started seeing the green shoots and the green leaves come, it was very beautiful.
Sonja, you obviously grew up in the land of lakes and forests. Can you look back over your life and see what it was that inspired you to work in this field of environment?
As I said, I think I slipped into this field of environment just by chance. I didn't ask for it. I didn't see it coming. And for me, I'm a farmer's daughter. My dad is a farmer. And one of my first memories walking in the forest, just feeling maybe 5, 6, alone. We used to go play alone in the forest, not feeling afraid, looking at the trees, the flowers. I just feel so connected and so happy. I used to collect flowers and press them and write the name and everything. And always being outside, swimming, skiing, everything. So nature is just, I didn't think it as something special or unique, it's just part of life. And when we heard this climate change conference coming to Copenhagen, I couldn't make the link between meditation and nature. I didn't make it. So I took out the picture of Trimurti and I sat there and I thought maybe it has got to do something with balance or... And I didn't even know it was good for the environment to be vegetarian. So I just didn't have it. So this nearly 20 years journey with environment service has really brought me to understand Gyan much deeper and how we are connected to nature. Actually, we live longer with the elements than with God, than with each other, always. And it's fantastic to understand the very vulnerable but also very deep relationship between the soul and the nature and the world around you. I do take from nature, I suppose, even though we're not supposed to. But I feel when the birds are singing for me here in Gyan Sarovar, I kind of hear Murli much better afterwards. The birds here are very special. They talk to you. And I make up for it. I think my pure presence when I'm out there will kind of give back to nature whatever happiness I take from it. Yeah.
Golo, you might want to share some of your early influences and what inspired you to work in this field. But I'm also interested in this point that Sonja has raised about taking from nature. And I'll come to you, Sister Jayanti, with the same question in a moment. But anything that stands out for you, Golo?
Well, I was with the Boy Scouts when I was very young, and we used to go every weekend into the forest and did camping summer, winter in the snow, and did all sorts of crazy stuff in nature. And we became nature boys, you know, and we were climbing on trees, and we were living in the outskirts of Frankfurt when I was growing up, and every day we were outside. So I was connected to nature, and one of my first memory was that I started to talk to animals. And when I saw birds, I started chirping, or when there was a cow, I started to talk to the cow, and it says, moo, moo, come, come. And the cow came, and I looked at the cow. It was very nice. So I always thought there's something more to it, but I couldn't put my finger on. And then actually I came in, I grew up, I came in Gyan, and I didn't have much relation to nature because I came more in the technological side, and somehow started with the whole solar thing. And then through the technology, clean technology, that was my entry point in the whole environmental field. So I come actually from that side, and now I'm trying to open my heart to nature and forget about technology, you know. So that's my process right now.
And it's clear, Sister Jayanti, that, you know, we've all of us had these profound experiences with nature. And yet when we come into Gyan, there is this teaching of not taking from nature. And I wonder how you understand that and how that understanding has changed over the past 50 years. Do you feel it has changed?
It was in the 80s that Daddy first used this expression, when somebody said to her they wanted to go visit the rainforest on the Gold Coast, and she asked them a question: why are you going? To see nature and appreciate it and take from it? Or are you thinking about going there to give something to nature? So when I heard that, I thought, I haven't done that at all. I haven't been thinking about giving back to nature. And of course, everything about life is receiving, receiving, receiving from nature till now. It carries on. You're taking air, you're taking water, everything is nature. And yet you've never counted it. I'll share a little story. I think it's true because it was mentioned with the person's name. But this young woman, who was the daughter of the director of Santander Bank. So early on in COVID times, I was still within the first few months in India at that time. I read this little video message, and the message was that She'd gone to see her father when he was dying in a hospital in Spain, and he said to her, "I've only now realized how much God has given me through nature and through oxygen. And now I have all this money in the bank, but I can't buy air that's going to help me. I can't breathe. My lungs have been contaminated." And so you only realize how much nature has given you, maybe when it's a crisis, maybe when there's no more water available. Then you'll realize, oh, I wish I'd listened to somebody telling me about turning the dripping tap off. Today, even now, we're very careless about nature and what we're taking. But to think about giving to nature, I think more and more Brahmins are aware of having a few minutes of yoga, giving Baba's light and love to nature. But mostly we just simply take. And I think that attitude again has to change. And I think the whole subject of organic farming, yogic farming, is part of that, where they actually go back to ancient techniques. And because it used to happen, the whole family used to till the soil, the whole family used to harvest together. And so the whole family used to be there with prayers. They didn't call it meditation, but certainly with prayers. There were prayers for the morning, prayers when you go to plant the seeds, prayers when you tend to them. It was just part of life. So prayer was part of life, and looking after nature with the power of prayer was part of life. And so we used to do that maybe till 100 years ago, and then we forgot about prayer and things like this. And so Baba has to come and remind us. And early days in Abu, everything was recycled. There was nothing that got thrown out. Everything was recycled. I'm thinking about, the coal dust. So they were having coal, and so somebody said to Baba, what I'd like to do is to make balls from the coal dust. And Baba said, yes, that's fine. How will you do it? And he said that I'm going to collect the manure from the cows. Baba had a few cows in those days. And I'm going to collect the manure, and I'm going to mix the manure with the coal dust so that then I make it into a ball. And then it's going to be fire, fuel for the fire. And I'm going to light the fire every day at 2:30 in the morning. So by 3:30, people have hot water. So basic things like this. I don't think anyone here would remember, but early days when the kitchen was still where now you've got the bedding department, they used to have firewood or coal, and the ash used to be collected and put in those containers by the side. Where there's the toli room, then there's a wash basin area, and you would have noticed, maybe you have, two sort of deep containers in the concrete, and now they're empty, but that used to be for the ash. And we used to have metal plates, not steel, but some other nickel or something, and you took the ash and you used the ash to wash your plate, and it was cold water. You didn't have running hot water, so it was cold water. But the nickel began to shine. You could see when it was clean, it sparkled. And so it was an exercise in everything being simple, everything being economical, a circular economy on all levels. So Baba was very, very concerned and cared about everything around. So nature was part of that.
And Brahma Baba himself had dealings with nature and growing vegetables, and I'm coming back to this healing power of nature. They've done research to show that it's a phenomenon, that nature does heal us, and the more biodiverse the nature is, the quicker the process of healing, which is one of the tragedies of losing so much of our plant species. But how, in this day and age, when we have mental health crisis, and we know the healing power of nature, how do we as Brahmins take healing from nature for our mental health without exploiting or without taking inappropriately? What is the right relationship there to receive the healing power of nature?
There's very few of us, I imagine, who live in nature. Most of us live in cities or towns or even villages where you're not in touch with nature in the same way. But if you give a person who's unwell a little plant to take care of, just a pot with a plant, and they look after it, there's a new dimension they begin to experience. They're using their hands, they're not just using their heads, they're connecting with something that's alive. And if they talk to it, if they love it, they see it flourish. And if they don't, they see it wilt. And so it's a very visible form of care and compassion, and I'm sure that's good for mental health.
I'm curious as well how each of you gives to nature. How do you go about giving to nature? Is it in meditation? Is it in other ways? Sonja, let's begin with you.
I visualize that when nature is in balance and pure, all the elements are in absolute order, and everything which is orderly is beautiful. So for me, order, balance, and beauty is together. And in my pure being, as pure as I am, with Baba's help, that pure vibration will align those matter, those elements in that pure order. So in my understanding, just being pure and working to become purer, wherever I move, I will serve matter. I would serve matter with the chair I'm sitting in, I would serve the body, I would serve all matter, just by being pure. And this is the best I can do. And then, of course, not to waste, and that's also another thing I have to be very careful. Now I have a new thing for my wardrobe. If I buy a new piece of cloth, I have to give one away. It's kind of internal agreement, just to minimize how many things I have, and not to waste food, not to waste water. That's also a very important topic. I mean, we all have areas where we don't do very well in terms of sustainability. And that's unavoidable, and it's good to talk about it. But
what do you mean by air?
It's also, maybe I print too much, for example. You know, that's I find it hard to change that habit. But I have one habit: I never waste food. I never throw food out in the kitchen. In Copenhagen, it's like one portion per year or something by mistake. So it's good to have one thing where you're always successful.
So practical things as well as pure consciousness. Golo, in your presentation, you spoke very beautifully about the aura that we have and serving through our angelic form. For you, is it a question of consciously radiating that energy and that will feed the elements? How does that work for you?
Well, I'm a nature lover. And I used to go mountain hiking, sailing, snorkeling, diving, surfing, you name it. And then 4 years ago, I was riding with a motorcycle through the Alps. And this was always my dream. So I did it. And I know some brothers also, they have some motorcycles and they're riding through nice countrysides. And then I saw in the Alps that I came from one valley in Switzerland to another valley, and suddenly all changed, and the valley was dying. All the trees were dead, brown, and all the little rivers were dead. And I understood that nature is dying. It was not like understanding, it was feeling, it was an experience. It was so thorough that I sold my motorcycle and I decided I should not take any more from nature. But of course, it's related to a shift in understanding who am I. As long as we are in body consciousness, we are interacting with nature, and we used to take from nature. You know, it's like a giving and taking all the time. And Baba so often tells to us, become soul conscious, become soul conscious, become soul conscious, become an angel, become a donor. So I'm trying to make that quantum leap. And I think it's also the time right now we're in. We see the world going through some very interesting phase, and we see also the Brahma Kumaris going through an interesting phase of transformation. And things which have been granted and we took as granted in the world are mirage, they are no more, but also in Brahma Kumaris it becomes difficult to take sustenance from daddies are gone, Bab Dada is sort of coming in a video message now, and things are changing. So I feel I have to do this quantum jump and become an angel, become aware of my angelic costume, and become aware how my energy is a form of light, my thoughts, my emotion, form of light, interacting with all subtle energy of all beings. There have been a Russian scientist, his name is Kalerian, and he made photographs of leaves. Already 30 years ago, it's called Kalerian photography, and he made photos of the aura of leaves and trees. Every plant, every being in nature has an aura, an energy field around it, and when you cut the leaf, after 10 minutes, the aura disappears, and then the leaf is really dead. So this energy field and my own energy field, they are interacting. Every thought I'm sending out is light which is going out. If it's a good thought, it can be creative and supportive and enhancing and going towards golden age. If it is fear-based or full of anxiety or negative thoughts, it's like a shadow which I'm sending out, and it can create havoc. And I see sometimes what happens in the world and what happens in the Brahma Kumaris is closely related. So I think it's high time for all of us to look into our thoughts and really bring them in loving, compassionate and positive, free ourselves of the old trigger points, and become aware that I'm an angel and I'm a creator. And in meditation, I'm trying to go into that consciousness and serve nature from above and give light, love and compassion to the animal kingdom, but also to the earth, the water, the trees, the forest, to the 5 elements, and sort of bring them back in an original state of purity. I don't go too much in details because you can get lost also in that, but I'm trying to serve the whole physical universe, not only planet Earth, also the moon, the sun, our solar system, the galaxy, because I believe we create a whole new universe in Satyuga. So that's a bit my personal journey, and I think it's time now for all of us to make that jump. And it's a big jump. It takes all our power, all our strength, and it's the biggest transformation, which is, we're going right now through that phase, so that's why we have also so many things coming up.
It does feel an exciting time because you can sense the BK family is moving into a more subtle consciousness, a more angelic consciousness. I'm staying in Pandav Bhavan at the moment, and without anyone saying it would be a nice, from 6 to 7:30 we're all gathering around the Tower of Peace in silence, sending Sakash out into the world. It feels like we're naturally becoming more subtle. There was a quote in the presentation that Golo did this morning from Leonardo da Vinci. Realize that everything connects to everything else. And I think this reminder of how interconnected we are with the natural world is a good reminder. And I know, Sister Jayanti, you've tried to keep your karma with the different elements on the right side, because who knows when destruction comes, which element will be there to challenge you. Do you consciously serve the elements, or do you feel that by just raising your consciousness, the elements will naturally be absorbing that pure vibration?
For many, many years, that was my focus, just connection with God, and that's it. But in the last few years, I've become very aware that there can be a positive contribution to serving nature. And so, yes, I don't usually think about water, air, earth, etc. separately, but just being up above and sending Baba Sakash to the whole planet, knowing that it's reaching human souls, it's reaching all the different elements also, but it's that conscious thing of actually serving.
So it would be a deliberate, conscious thought?
I think it has to be. I don't think it's enough to let it just be automatic and natural and part of everything else, but it needs conscious attention.
So by extension, our relationship with the natural world in Golden Age, it's hard to see where the physical body ends and nature begins, because we're just so connected and everything is so harmonious. Does that relationship get created now in the Confluence Age? Or is it just something that occurs naturally when we arrive in Golden Age because our consciousness arrives in such purity? In other words, are we at this time in the Confluence Age building that positive, harmonious relationship?
I think we have to. I don't think anything happens automatically up there. I think whatever sanskars we create today are the sanskars we bring with ourselves in the Golden Age. So we go up, but nothing happens there. The soul is inert. No change, no transformation, nothing new. And then I come down, and it's all the work I've done beforehand to create those sanskars of love and respect and support for nature, rather than just take. And like Sonja said, from a very early age, I remember my mother telling me, I'm going to give you this now. When you finish it, you can have some more, but I don't want you to leave anything on your plate. Now, this was like when I must have been 4 or 5. And most parents don't do that with their children anymore. Not in India, not abroad. It's not part of the culture, so I don't know where she got it from. But she very consciously said to me, you have to leave a clean plate. Somebody told me, but it's not polite to do that. You have to leave a little bit there to make sure that your host feels that you've had enough. But I think that, social customs are human things, and they're not always right. And so I know I have to finish everything on my plate. And so that's been something that's been instilled in me. And I think her consciousness must have been, I didn't ask her about it, but I'm imagining, where did she get it from? If you grew up in any war situation, and she would have grown up in the time of partition, and so food was scarce, everything was scarce. And so she was very aware that whatever it is you're given to eat is actually a gift from God. That's, again, something inbuilt in India. Again, today I don't know, but certainly when I was growing up at that time, food isn't just human production, but food is something that God has given you. And so you have to respect it and value it. And if somebody were to say, I don't like this, I don't want this, she'd tell them, have respect for nature. It was again part of her thinking, and she wasn't an environmentalist per se, but these were the things that she grew up with, respecting food. Now, how many people would use that term? It's so easy to say, I don't like this, I don't like that. No, respect the food. So there are things that, as you said, you grow up with and they stay with you. So aware of the scarcity of water, aware of the energy of electricity, can I reduce?
Can I come back momentarily to the subject of climate change and the climate debate that we engage in? It's a fine line for us because we know that the natural elements are going to play their part when it comes to destruction. And yet we are part of this conversation in the global arenas for mitigating the effects of climate change and living more simply so that we can reduce the impact of climate change. How have you squared this within your own minds? Because there will come a time when these people that we're talking to discover that all along we knew the natural world was going to get worse and would eventually result in destruction. How do you navigate that fine line? Yeah, Golo.
Yeah, I get the difficult question. Yeah, we are aware about the two sides of the coin. On one side, Baba says destruction is coming anyhow. And on the other side, we are quite active at UN conferences or environmental conferences, which are having the aim to reverse climate change, protect nature, and so on, and fix the problem. And indeed, it is a dilemma. So what we do is we feel the pulse. And accordingly, also we have changed our language. We are not talking about destruction, we're talking about transformation and transition. And we're talking of building inner resilience and strength. And we're talking about inner change brings outer change. And change of mindset brings change of action, and change of action brings a better world. So we are making this connection to empower people on the inside and make them understand, yes, if I change on the inside, I have an impact. I'm not sort of a victim of the situation on the outside, which is very important to create some hope in people. Of course, we also feel the pulse, and if people are inclined, we talk about the divine, the supreme, which is of course easy if you are in an interreligious dialogue, because everybody believes there in a divine story, in a divine being, and the whole thing what has happened is embedded in a greater story which makes sense. And interestingly, in the last years, we are being overtaken by some organizations. For example, Jim Bendel, Sonja, no? He was, what was it, the organization they found? The Deep Adaptation. They were talking that we cannot change the outcome of climate change and that we're all gonna die. And they prepared something called Death Cafe. So you can go in a death cafe and you can undergo a controlled death procedure and die alive in the death cafe due to climate change and environmental degradation. And he's a scientist, and he was of course chucked out of the academia because they didn't like it. But now even reputed research organizations, they suddenly come up and they say, we're not gonna fix it. We're doomed. And we have been at a press conference some years ago in Bonn, and the scientists, they introduced a concept called the hothouse Earth. And these guys were sitting there in front of us, and they said, you see, the climate is, you can imagine, it's like a ball, and the ball is rolling and rolling, and now comes a valley. And the ball is rolling in the valley, going backwards and forwards, and ultimately he settles in the valley. And that is a new climate equilibrium. Equilibrium, yeah. Yeah, I'm a Germanic. Equilibrium. And that's where the new climate will settle. And everybody, and we were 150 people, all top scientists, top politicians. We were also there in the front row, and next to us, all the heads of institutes and foreign ministers, they were all listening. And then the guy said, and this means the Earth will be 3.5 degrees hotter, and we're all gonna die. And then there was pin drop silence there, and everybody, oops, we're all gonna die. And then not much was discussed afterwards. It was shocking revelation what is in the pipeline. And the scientists are aware about that. And that's why our presence is so important, because we can bring hope that a catastrophic breakdown, climate breakdown, the end of the world is not the end of us. It's the beginning of something new and very beautiful. And we are being of lights and we are immortal. So we can bring hope and project hope through our own understanding of who we are. That's why it is so important that we are there. And of course, we have to be extremely careful, extremely diplomatic, because it is a tight walk. And we always feel what's the situation and how is the soul in front of us, you know? And we have many beautiful experiences, and sometimes we are very careful, and the other person is then asking us a question that we can open up a little bit more. And I'm part of the several press release emails, which I get regular from research institutes, and they all talk openly now of breakdown, catastrophe, climate Armageddon. They are using words which we are not using. So we are a bit careful, but other people are more outspoken. And I think the events which are happening in the world will also help us, that we are not the bearer of the bad news, you know. Because in old days, you got chopped off your head if you were the bearer of the bad news, you know, were the emissary and you brought
You shoot the messenger, yeah.
Shoot the messenger.
Sister Jayanti, earlier, Golo was sharing how in the very early COP conferences, people believed that we could fix climate change with technology, with science, with innovation. And they were saying, what are you doing here? You're yogis. What can you contribute? Whereas now the scientists are saying, nothing we're doing is working. Can we ask you what your solutions are? They're ready to maybe listen to a yogic point of view. You've been to every COP conference since 2009, bar one or two that you've missed. What have you seen as the value of our presence at these events? And do you foresee a time when we change our message and say, actually, it is time to go home?
2009, there was this question, what are you doing here? Then we take them through the step-by-step message of outside, inside, thoughts, feelings, and within a couple of minutes they would actually get it. But around 2014, there was a change, and the nature the biggest nature organization in the world, they approached us so that we should have a speaker on their panel. Now, for them to come to us asking for a speaker was like unheard of. It was very new at that time. So they began to realize that there were things that were happening that people of faith knew and believed in, and they didn't. And so they wanted to have that input. Many of you would have heard of this woman called Vandana Shiva. Anyone heard of Vandana Shiva? Okay. So early days when I used to meet her, she'd look at me. No, I was a Brahma Kumari because she's from India, so the white sari was recognized way back. And she would sort of turn her head the other way. She wouldn't want to talk to me. And then in Brazil, this would have been 2002, 20 years after Brazil, or 2012 maybe, 20 years after, it was called Rio Plus 20. So I'm walking out of the conference, it was big boulevard, and I'm going out this way, and she's coming in. And as she sees me coming, she speeds up, and she comes very quickly to me, and she's very recognizable with this big, big red tilak and sari. You don't see her in anything else, sari and red tilak. And so as she's approaching me, she comes quickly and gives me a hug there on the street and says, "I'm so glad that you're here." And I was totally shocked. And then she was going to be speaking on the same platform as me. I think it was a Templeton organization from New York that had organized it, an interfaith organization. And she revealed that she'd always been dismissive of the religious and spiritual organizations because she felt they didn't care about nature, the environment, and they weren't doing anything to support her work. So she'd been following her own instincts but not connecting. And at some point she realized that faith-based organizations have an outreach to people on the grassroots level. And they didn't. The environmental activists didn't. And so she understood the value of having faith-based organizations working with her to be able to serve people on the ground. And it's absolutely true that this outreach that faith-based organizations have is across the world. At some point, maybe not the communist bloc, but now even there, things have changed. And so people have recognized the value of spirituality, of not just the outreach. One is very practical, so she was looking at the practical thing. But now people value the input of the faith organizations because they bring a message of hope to people, not just Brahma Kumaris, but all of them. Because there's a faith that holds everything together, that God is in charge, everything will work out in the end. They don't know how, but they have that faith. And so they're able to offer hope to people. And so there's now real value for people. And the other thing that happened was Christiana Figueres got to know us, and she came to one of our panels in Bonn. There were thousands of people there and 25 people in our little group. And she told the gathering, and she didn't come to speak, but she was there, so then we asked her, and she did speak. And she told them that there's many people out there and just a handful here, but I think that what these people are telling us is very important. And so I wanted to give my presence to be able to support that. And after that, she had a chief of staff meet with Valerian and get connected with the interfaith group, and that continues till today. So there's a lot of respect for spiritual understanding in terms of all of this. One more example, I think it was in Bonn when the World Gathering couldn't be held in Fiji, and so it happened in Bonn, which is the headquarters of climate change, UN. And the UNESCO stand had a theme on on its panel, on the wall, and it said, "Changing minds, not climate." And so I felt the messages got through. If UNESCO can do that, many others would have also noticed.
And to be fair, you were one of the first people that came out with this point of it's the change of consciousness that will change the climate.
Correct. Before us, people like the Church of England, the Anglican Church, was quite involved in climate change, maybe 10 years before us, but they didn't come up with this concept. And it was Brahma Kumaris who were able to articulate this and make people understand that that's what needs to change.
Sonja, what changes have you noticed in terms of people's attitudes towards us as a faith-based organisation?
I think when we started, everyone said that the world will become better if we pollute less. So we used to link it to less waste thoughts, polluted thoughts. Then they realized that is not happening, so they thought we adapt to new circumstances. So adaptation became the big topic, and it's very easy for us to chip in there with adapting your personality, and where do you get the power to do that? Then they realized adaptation is not enough because extreme weather events are increasing, so we have to become resilient, very, very strong. And that's also very easy for us to talk about, because where do we get our strength from, our inner strength? It's a very spiritual topic. And the last few years, the main topic has been hope, actually. So there is a desertification COP, and their main slogan is restoring land, restoring hope. And often when we get asked to speak, we get asked to share about hope. And I want to share a little story with you, and I've shared it with you many times, but it's my favorite story because everyone has to ask themselves, what gives me hope? And how would you answer that if someone asks you, what gives you hope for the future of the world? So in Paris, we met Professor Rockström, and he's very enthusiastic at that time. Now I think he's calmed down. And I asked him, how come you can be so enthusiastic? And he said, I have hope in scalable technology. And then Jayanti was there, so I asked you, what gives you hope? And you said that the soul is immortal. And I thought, wow, two very different answers. Scalable technology, immortal soul. So I asked Golo, and Golo said, it gives me hope that we can shape the world around us with our consciousness. And then I asked you, Valerian, and you said that hope comes from dialogue. And so I realized that hope is very individual for each one. So we are now talking about hope in many different ways, hope in transforming the self, hope in taking from God, hope in what? But we also often ask ourselves, what do we want the UN to talk about in a few years' time? And I don't know what you would answer, or you would answer to that now, because we forgot that question in our last meeting. But I would love the UN to talk about God, I think, or like that, in a few years' time. So that means we have to start to practice it, how to get the divine into the equation.
It'll happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sister Jayanti, what do you feel when you look at the achievements of the Brahma Kumaris Environment Initiative and the Interfaith Liaison Committee and all the green efforts that have happened over the last 20 years?
I feel very, very proud of all my colleagues, really, because everyone has worked so hard. And it's beautiful, each one has different talents and skills, and everybody comes together to share that and respect each other for what it is they're doing, because nobody can tackle the whole UN thing on their own. There's so many different aspects to move into, and so it's been very beautiful to see that, so much appreciation of that.
We're nearing the end of our time and our conversation, but I was speaking with Golo the other day, and he talked about Shankar, which inspired me to churn that we're children of Brahma, we're children of Vishnu, and by definition we must also be children of Shankar.
We're nieces and nephews of Shankar. Shankar is our uncle.
He's our uncle. Okay, I've got a new uncle, that's nice, Uncle Shankar. But when you love planet Earth, Mother Earth, so much, and it's so heartbreaking being a bystander of the destruction that is happening in front of our eyes, knowing that we can't do anything to stop it, and we know that destruction is coming, and that it will be a complete transformation of Earth. At what point do we take the responsibility of being nephews and nieces of Shankar and say, okay, at this point I am prepared to open my eyes and say, let destruction commence? How do we square that as lovers of nature and reach that point?
I think that just as Baba told us, if you say God has come, who listens? They think you're a cult, until they've understood soul, they've understood God, you have to understand many things before you can understand this simple statement, God has come. Simple, but it takes a lot of background. And when other people say it, it's more effective. We don't have to say, hey, destruction is coming. They are saying it already. And as a result of that, we'll say, hey, it's not just a destruction, it's actually a transformation. We can go home. We can be liberated from all these things. A simple example I used to give was, maybe people have seen pictures of it, but you've actually seen the place. There's a place called Battersea Power Station, and it was like a table turned upside down, square, flat, and the chimneys were like this, so it was that. And I used to think to myself and say to people who would understand, people think that there's going to be a smooth transition into a new age, a better world. What are you going to do with things like Battersea Power Station? Is that going to go with us into the new age? I don't think so. Where's it going to go? Something has to happen in between. And so you don't want the old world to carry on as it is. There has to be an end and a beginning. But we don't have to announce that. They will tell us, what should we do? And we'll tell them, remember God. So we'll give a positive answer. A woman who knows very much what's happening with the environment because she's given her life to it, said to me just recently that she's actually having environmental activists come to a retreat in all the regions of the world. So they don't all have to travel, but she goes to different regions and she's conducting meditation retreats with them. Why? Because she's found that they're either depressed or worse, suicidal, because they don't find any answers. They are not able to shift things in the direction that's needed. So now here's a woman who's raising the flag for nature and the environment, and she's saying that they've lost hope. And so what is she doing? She's not telling them it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay. She's telling them, let's meditate.
Golo, are you ready to open your eyes? Your eyes of Shankar?
The eyes of Shankar.
The third eye? Is it the third eye Shankar opens or both his physical eyes? It's the third eye.
I did a bit of surfing, and in surfing you have to be on top of the wave. You know, like actually a little bit ahead of the wave, so you have a very good run. And when you miss that point, the wave rolls over you and the whole thing is lost. So I feel at the moment is a time when nature slowly is changing its role. All the time nature was serving us, and now slowly nature becomes teacher. Situations also become teacher. But climate change is teaching us, food will become less, we have to adapt and we have to transform. I feel that's the moment when we have to be on top of the wave, a little bit ahead of the wave actually. And all in surfing is about anticipation. When the wave is coming, the real wave, the one you want to catch, and when you have to get up on the board, start paddling, get speed, get balance, and then be on a little bit ahead of the crest of the wave. And I feel the situation is similar, that we have to embrace now the transformation, the change which is coming, actually welcoming it, you know, not see, oh, there is things getting destroyed. We have to change the language. Oh, time is there for creation, and I become a creator. I can develop and show my full potential. I think that's the time, and that we make that flip in our brain away from the consciousness, oh, the trees are dying, the water level is down, India is getting heat wave, my Etihad flight is being cancelled, oh, ho, ho, ho. All these kind of things which are happening, and we embrace it. And we ride on top of the wave and become a master. But to become a master, you have to be detached, you know, and see the big picture. And I feel that's the time we're right now in. And in meditation, I make this effort to become master of time. So I have here time. I'm still trying to visualize how time looks like. It's pretty tricky. And I become master of space. Space means all the environment around me, whatever happens in the world around me, that's space. Because Einstein said that time and space creates the environment we're in. We're actually in a four-dimensional space, and that's the time-space continuum we're right now in. And my aim is to become master of that. So become surfing ahead on top of the wave and become a master of the whole process and become fearless. And these are big challenges because we all have to free ourselves from the old connections of 64 birth, being body conscious, being connected to nature and so on. So we have to become aware of our own trigger points, which are stored in our angelic body, in our aura, and we slowly have to get rid of all the shadows. And that's the process in meditation. And I'm so happy because the last, especially when the foreigners are here, I can feel it spiritually, such a boost also in vibration for Madhuban. Also I'm every evening in History Hall, and it's like a fresh wind, And I really feel, I hope the flight chaos is continuing a little bit longer. So many of you are stuck here and slowly become Madhubanivasis. And even Shashiben will be happy at the end of the day.
Well, you can teach us how to become a Madhuban Niwasi, definitely.
Can I mention something?
Yeah.
In Shantivan, they've been having evening meditations for 2 hours every day. And anyway, they used to do that because they didn't have any groups, because the whole of Madhuban was clear just for the integrated retreat. So it was 2 hours yoga that was going on. And so again, it was announced today. And 2 young brothers, they've been in Gyan a long time, but physically they're not so old. They're very young. And they said to me, why are we doing so much for peace when we know that the war's coming and we have to go home? And I just laughed because I was getting into the car to come up here, so I didn't answer them properly. But of course, it is a question, and it's a question we've been challenged with right from the time of Million Minutes of Peace, because that's when Lord Ennals challenged us that this, what are you doing? And all this is going on. So for me, the answer is that we're meditating for peace, not temporary peace now, but we're meditating for real peace in the world. And so the higher our consciousness, the swifter the transformation and the quicker the liberation of souls from sorrow. So meditating for peace is not an artificial thing, it's very real. And so the same thing in terms of nature. Our service to nature today, our respect to nature today is going to give us the possibility of having nature complement whatever we do through the cycle, except right to the very end. Even 100 years ago, nature and humans were cooperating together. A few things might have happened from time to time, but generally that was the case. In these last 100 years, there's no cooperation between one and the other anymore. But we're wanting to go back to 4,900 years of cooperation. So how deep must my consciousness be that I have to give and serve nature?
So many points to absorb. I think, Golo, you left me somewhere out on the ocean with a wave beginning to form and wanting to get on top of the wave. And I like that sense of getting slightly ahead of the direction of travel, that this is the way it's all moving towards, and we want to be steering that and riding it. And I suppose the other secret is not to look behind you too much at what is being destroyed, because sometimes you feel like weeping when you see what's happening, and that could pull us under the water and we might miss the wave. So don't look back.
It's actually not just, maybe part of it is the essence. Because if I'm facing forward, then I'm seeing what Baba's saying. You'll see the trees of Satyug. But if I'm looking back, my foot slips and I go under.
And if you've ever gone under a wave, you turn like in a washing machine cycle on fast spin. It's quite an experience. Sonja, your feeling of being ready to let go of this beautiful world and see it go through its transformation, how are you preparing for that?
My experience is my inner world is becoming more and more beautiful, and the outer world is becoming more and more ugly. So it's a kind of very natural moving to that inner beautiful world. Last evening I had a very nice meditation experience. I meditated on the body of light, and suddenly I felt like dancing in the meditation. I have to sort of concentrate to sit still, and I realized that when the elements are light, and they are very free and very moving and very light, and it was so easy to remember Baba. And that when I'm body conscious, I'm very stuck, it's like stiff. And so I'm experimenting, but also I'm practicing to see beautiful things in the ugly things. So my old mum is very old, and she's very negative nowadays, and everything is horrible and terrible. And I'm becoming a master in 2-3 minutes, shift her to the good side of life. So she is my master teacher in everything I meet, to turn it to something positive. And now I'm working with Gyan Sarovar campus. There's so much rubbish around. When we drive the highway up, it says World Economy for a Better World, and it's just full of plastic underneath. So I'm trying to see the positive. How can I turn this to something positive? So I think for next year we all go out together and pick plastic, isn't it? We can prepare a cleaning day of Madhuban. Would you happy to do that? Yeah. All of us together with the cows, we go and clean. Yes, very good. So in a sense, I feel I'm doing the best I can, and I'm not worried about the world, etc. I could be worried about my own vices, if that's something, but not to let go of the outer world, no. Maybe it's because I'm a nurse. I've been working with dying people for my whole life, so it's a kind of part of letting go.
Final word to you, Sister Jayanti. This last week has been a very good practice for all of us in seeing the bombs falling, literally. And I feel that as a family, we've remained very stable. I haven't picked up any fluctuation of anyone's stage. This is just a practice, it's going to get more. Any final words from you of how we bear witness to the scenes of destruction and maintain our knowing that the process is being held at the highest level, everything will be okay, and we just maintain that faith and connection and move forwards without any hesitation? Any advice on how to do that?
We've been practicing for this for a long time, most of us, and even those who are new, you've been practicing this for some time, but that awareness that nothing here should pull me, whether it's my relatives, my friends, my siblings, my parents, my children, whoever it is I'm connected with, can I really be detached from them? That's a practice we've had for a long time. And secondly, can I be detached from the consciousness of this? Again, every Murli is teaching us this. So use these basic concepts to actually come to the stage where with one thought you can let go of this and connect with Baba. Soul connecting to the Supreme Soul. And just feel Baba's light and love embrace you and hold you. And you're part of the journey home. You're part of the solution to the problems of the world that are causing so much grief and sorrow. Our attachment sometimes makes us forget that it's my attachment and my ego that's created problems, that's given me unhappiness. And so now to remind myself, I'm connected with the one the beautiful statement that Baba teaches us again and again came today in the Murli, the remover of sorrow and the bestower of happiness. But I'm doing this not just for myself. I've been doing it for myself a long time. But maybe I now need to refine it to that point where I'm actually able to do it for others, so that they are liberated from sorrow. And that was what I meant earlier, that we don't say the world is finishing. We say it's time for liberation. It's time to come back home. And the last memory of souls will be of the sweetness of the home. This is why they think that heaven is up there. It's not. But for them, going home will be like heaven. And so we have to be able to create that consciousness for ourselves, so that then this is what we share with others.
Should we take a couple of minutes and go to the sweet home and experience that? Sister Sonja, Sister Jayanti, Brother Golo, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, pleasure.
Thank you. Very beautiful questions.